Now, Lapid's statements come following the release of a new survey of American Jewish voters that was taken after the latest Israel-Gaza conflict, and its results have Israel worried. That is because the survey finds that a sizable American Jewish minority believes some of the harshest criticisms of Israel, including that it's committing genocide and apartheid. 34% believe that Israel's treatment of Palestinians is similar to racism in the United States. 25% agree that Israel is an apartheid state, and 22% think that Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinians. Now, the survey, which was commissioned by the Jewish Electorate Institute, has found that the younger the voters, the more critical of Israel they were. And joining us to break this down is our U.S. correspondent, Mike Wagenheim. So, Mike, tell us more about this survey and how many people actually took part in it. What part of the U.S. do they come from?
Well, this is the thing, Natasha. We in the media sometimes like to create drama. I think we need to hold off on formulating any strong opinions around this particular poll. It's not to say it doesn't have value, but we won't know for a while whether it really holds water. There were 800 self-identified American Jews who participated in this poll. Keep in mind, it was an online and text poll, which tends to have a lower rate of reliability to begin with. It has a 6% margin of error for those who participated who were 40 and under, which, tends to be on the high side of acceptability for a poll. And for the Orthodox Jewish population that participated, the margin of error is a whopping 11.6%, which is way outside the accepted margin. So let's take that into account. Secondly, the timing of it. This came about a month and a half after the latest round of conflict with Hamas. The Democratic Party certainly holds the majority of the American Jewish vote, about 75%, give or take. And you look at, what the media was saying at the time here in America regarding the Israel-Hamas conflict, what a lot of the prominent left-wing Democrats who were saying about the conflict kind of goes hand in hand with a more critical view of Israel. So you have to take all of that into account firstly before you really start breaking down these numbers, Natasha.
Okay, so taking this with a grain of salt, what were highlights or the other highlights of the survey besides, some of those statistics that I just listed out?
I think when you look at the approval rating for President Biden in terms of his handling of affairs with Israel, it brings up some questions as to how, some of those participating in the survey could be so critical of Israel while applauding Biden's relations with Israel, because Biden's relations with Israel have been, pretty good. He backed them at the United Nations Security Council during that very controversial flare-up with Hamas in early to mid-May. He hasn't made any public pronouncements. The State Department has, but Biden himself has not made any public pronouncements that have been critical of Israel. So he's been largely supportive of Israel, and that really stood out. 75% of those surveyed said that they approved of Biden's handling of relations with Israel. On anti-Semitism, you mentioned the Global Conference Forum on Anti-Semitism going on right now. It was notable that 61% of those surveyed in this Jewish Electorate Institute survey said that they feel that anti-Semitism comes from the right wing at a 61% rate rather than the left wing at a 22% rate. That, I think, should have Israel more worried than anything, because Israel and pro-Israel supporters in America specifically have been trying to kind of detangle that and try to balance that equation a little bit more. At least according to this survey, if we believe the numbers, that's not working.